Hello, everybody. I hope that you all are doing good. So let's wait just a few more minutes to see if somebody else will join to this workshop, and we will start in a few minutes.
Hey, Dr. Teran, until we're waiting, and Dr. Para, how about 8 o'clock tomorrow? Can we meet at 8 o'clock tomorrow with Liz?
At what time did you say?
8 o'clock tomorrow.
AM?
AM, yes.
Yes.
We can make it PM as well, but how about AM, 8 AM?
Yes, I can do it tomorrow.
Yeah, John, how about
Okay,
you?
yeah.
All right, let me send an email. I know Liz is more like evening person, but
Okay.
yeah, okay. Well, let's wait a few more minutes. Is Dr. Allo gonna join?
I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
we can wait just maybe
Yeah.
more minutes to see.
All right. And
Okay, I think that we can start. Let's start today with a base introduction to Python. So this is, guys, a workshop, a series of workshops that we're going to be introducing some Python concepts. It's a hands-on activity. So I will be sharing with you a link so that you can go along with me through this workshop. So this workshop actually covers some basic concepts in Python. And next week and the further weeks, we will, or the next sections, we will start introducing some AI techniques to start doing your own data analysis application, okay? So that's what we are going to highlight, what we will be covering along these different sections: introduction to Python and introduction to AI. So if you are interested to know more about what our group is doing, so I will be sharing with you guys this link that you can visit the web page where we have some information, highly informations like events that we have been doing and future events that will be happening in at FAMU related to AI, machine learning, deep learning, and generative AI. So let me just briefly introduce myself. I'm Carlos Teram. I'm assistant professor here at FAMU. I've been here working for 4 or 5 years as assistant professor, 3 years. And first I was instructor. My area of interest and research is applying machine learning and deep learning techniques through different fields or areas. That is image analysis, remote sensing, neurodegenerative disease, natural language processing, and also I have some expertise and work in high performance computing infrastructure and multimodal data functions. So this is my research of interest. So if any of you are interested in doing or conducting some research in those kind of areas, so I'm open to have some discussions and to have some meetings with you all if you are interested in those topics. So what we have for these next sections, the first phase, which is January 14, well, actually, this date were moved, so we are starting January 21st, and then we will keep with the second section of this phase one, which cover foundation in programming in Python. We will learn the basic logic in math. So the idea today we will cover like pretty basic knowledge about how to do programming in Python. So if you are not familiar with Python, today is the day that you get in touch with Python and learn those basic things that will help you to start building your skills. Then we are going to learn some data science library. That's going to happen next section. And we will learn some foundation of data analysis, how we can analyze our data, doing some randomly or pre-processing the data, and maybe we will use some basic machine learning algorithms like logistic regression. In the second phase, we'll have to actually update the dates. We will let you know soon. We will introduce AI, or how we can use AI to help us doing programs or do our own coding, and start AI and machine learning techniques more deeply than what we will be covering on the next section. Okay, so these workshops or these series are actually conducted by members of the Data Science, AI, and ML Research and Learning Cluster, which is led by Dr. Elo, and the members of the teams, Dr. Nelly, which is here, Dr. Parra, Maurice, and Jones. Dr. Jones are a member of this or part of this team. So today, guys, we will be covering a concept about Jupyter Notebooks. What is a Jupyter Notebook? How we can access Jupyter Notebook, get familiar using Jupyter Notebooks, and start doing Python code on Jupyter Notebooks. So I will be sharing with you with you all this link, and you will wait for me for the instructions that I will give you before you start doing any modification, okay? So, but I will be sharing with you all this link. That link, let me see. So I think that you should be able to see that link. Let me know if you're not. You're not able to see the link or use that link. So again, today we are going to get familiar with Jupyter Notebooks, in particular using Google Colab. That is what we will be using today, Google Colab, and some basic coding in Python, okay? Okay, perfect. I'm gonna stop here sharing, and I'm going to start sharing the Jupyter Notebook and start reviewing those concepts. Okay. So this is the Jupyter Notebook, guys, that you should be able to access through the link that I just shared with you all in the chat. So if you go on the chat, you should be able to see that link. And let me know if you had any issue accessing this file. So I want you all to get on this file. So in that way you can, go with me filling out this form and this Jupyter Notebook. And if you have any questions, we can clarify along the way. So I just want to know if doing click on that link, it sends you automatically to this file right here. You can thumbs up if you were able to use that link or that word correctly, and you are already here, or if you had any issue accessing the file. You can also type in the chat. Okay. Well, so let's start introducing Jupyter Notebook first, in particular using Jupyter Notebook on Google Colab. Before that you do any modification, I will ask to do a copy. So I will ask to do a copy. If you go up here in this file, because this is the file that we can see that is shared to everybody. So if you do any modification over this file, that modification will be shared to all of the participants. So I don't want that happen. So for that reasons, I want you to do your own copy, and then you can work on your own copy. So let's do file, and in file, go over save a copy in Drive. So use that options right here, save a copy on in Drive, click on that one. That will create your own copy. And now from this copy, you can rename here. You can do your name. So I'm gonna retitle, let's do Carlos Teran, which is my name. You can do yours. And now we are going to start working over, or you will start working over that file, over the copy, not the original one. So this is what we are going to, the ones that you will be using, okay? Well, so what we are going to cover here today is basic concept in Python, how we can get familiar with Python, printing a variable, creating a variable, using if statement, control statements. And then at the end, I will give a short introduction about how to create data frame, which is a data structure to manage data in Python, and how we can use some built-in function from this library. Okay, so that's the idea. The goal for this section is to be familiar with the coding in Colab notebooks and how to print statements, variables, data types, and in particular, pandas, which will be a data structure that we are going to be using for the next sections. Okay, the first things, let's see how a Jupyter Notebooks looks like and what we will find in a Jupyter Notebooks. So a Jupyter Notebooks is a IDE where we can actually do coding in Python. So for this IDE, this is the structure that we will find. So to do the coding, we will have something that is called cells. In the cells is where we are going to be doing the coding in cells. So if you see right here, this is a cell, this is a second one, all of these ones right here are cells. We will have two different types of cells. One of the cells is for text, and the another one will be for coding. So you will be selecting if you want to do a text or a coding cell. For example, this one right here is a coding cell. So for the first problems, let's practice changing the title of our notebook, which is something that we already did, and we rename it with the introduction to Python and your name. So we set the name, we rename the name for this Jupyter notebook. So I'm just gonna take out the copy of and just leave introduction to Python, Carlos Serra. So that's the first things that we did. For the second one, as I mentioned, we have two types of cell. One of the cell is for coding, and the second one is for typing a comment, typing maybe a title or a suggestions, or you want to describe what that piece of code is doing. So that is the cell test. So create a new text cell and type, this is a text cell. The way that we can do that, if you go over here, this is one of the cell. If you go with the cursor right here, you will have two options. One of the options is the coding cell, and the second one is the texting cell. So let's click in this one right here. And in here, let's do this one, and let's say this is a text cell. So this is how it will be rendered. This is a text cell. If we click it, this is what we got. This is a text cell. So for the text cell is used again to explain the code that you are doing or to do any comment on your code. Now, the second cell, let's create a cell for coding. So the same thing, here we have these two little buttons. So one is for coding and one is for testing. And let's do for text, and let's do the code. And here is, if you see the difference, we have the run button here, the play button. So this is a coding cell. And I'm gonna just do an example. I will do print, and I will say hello. So this is a Python structure, a Python functions that will print what is inside the parentheses. So I'm gonna run it. Let me see, I'm connected. I'm gonna run it, and it will print hello. There you go. So this is the output. This is the output that I got when I run this cell right here. Okay, hello. So again, we have two types of cell: a cell text, a text of cell, and a coding cell. Okay, for the problem 1.4, what we have right here is print hello world. So this is essentially what we did up here. We are printing, which is a built-in function in Python, and we are printing whatever message, right, we have in here. In this case, we have hello world. Okay, so let's now run this one. It says run the code below to print the text. I will learn the basic skill to implement ML system, to implement machine learning system. So this, again, we have the print function, the syntax, the parentheses, one of parentheses the open, another one close, and inside we have the full statement that we want to print. So we will just run it. Oh, let me run this one right here. Let's run this one, and I will learn the basic skill to implement a machine learning system. Okay, so let's keep practicing the print function. So we have the print function, print, and in here, what the problem asked was introduce yourself and your department. So in this case, I'm gonna take this comment out and I will do, my name is Carlos, and I work and I am assistant professor at CIS department. At CIS department, I'm gonna run the cell, and this is what I got. Okay, so this is another example of the print function in Python. Pretty easy, right? So now let's do the following thing. So now here they're asking me complete the code by printing your age. So in this case, my age is something important that I did not mention in here is that when you are going to print a phrase, a sentence, you need to do the double quotes. So you need to do the double quotes in order to print that information. Because if I don't do the quotes, it will understand that those words that I do have right here are actually variables. So I will introduce what is a variable later. And then we can do the quotes. And here, let's do 65. My age is 65, okay? So now what I've been asked in this part is that I need to print the age in a new line. So to print the age in a new line, I'm gonna do print a new, I will call a new print function, and I will do 65. Okay, my age is 65. So this is an example how we can use the print function in Python. Why this is important or what it is essential, because we are going to be working creating variables, data frames, and we need to know how to print the information stored on those variables, okay? So now let's write a code to print my favorite animal. So let's do print, and let's say, again, I'm working with text, so I need to do the quotes, my favorite animal. Is our ducks. Okay, let's print it. And there you go. Any question? Pretty easy. So far, we have just introduced a print function, how we can use a print function. So now, as I was mentioning, why that is important is not only to print message, but also to print information stored in a variable, okay? So now, in this case, in this second part and the third part, we are going to learn how we can create variables from different data types. When we are working in Python versus, if we compare Python versus any other programming language like C++ or Java, in Python, we don't have to declare the data type of the variable. Like for example, if you have to create a double, a float, we don't have to declare what type of variable is that. We just do the variable, the name of the variable, and then store the quantity that we want to store in that variable. So in this case, the first problem, the 3.1.1, it says create a variable called PD. So this is the name of the variable, and assign a string, the string, introduction to Python. Let's correct this one. It's introduction to Python to that variable. So this is my variable PD. And what I'm gonna do is introduction to Python, okay? So that is the variable that I'm gonna be saving. And in here, I'm gonna do PD. If you see now where I'm passing as an argument into my print function is the PD variable instead of the whole phrase. So this phrase right here, or this string is stored into the PD variable, and now I'm printing that variable. So let's run it, and this is exactly what was stored in this variable. So PD. Now, let's complete the code below. We are going to create a variable called age and assign an integer with the age variable, and then we are going to print that variable. Okay, so that's what we are going to do now. So first, what we will do is to create a variable. Let's say age. I'm gonna do my variable age. Age is gonna be equal to, let's do 45, and let's print. I will do something like, well, actually, let me show you this. I can do age, and it will print that numerical value. It will print age. That's it. Easy. So I create a variable, I store a value into that variable, and then I'm using print function to print whatever was stored in the age variable. But now you can actually combine strings along numerical values. So in the print functions, let's say my age is space, and I will do a comma here. So in this case, the print function will print this string next to the value that is stored in my age value. I'm gonna print it, and it says my age is 45, okay? So here we are actually combining a string with a numerical value. Okay, so in order to save all the changes and not to lose these changes, you can go on File and do Save. You can do File, do Save, or if you're using Windows, you can do Control S, or if you're using Mac, Command S, okay? And that will save all the changes and modification that you have done so far on your file. So complete the code below to create a variable called my department and assign a string with the name of your scope to it. So it says print this variable. For this one, create a variable called my department and assign a string to that one. So I will call my underscore department. And that's gonna be equal to, so I'm gonna assign a string value to that one, and I will do CIS, Computer Information Science. And then I will print, I will combine my department is comma, and I will do my department. Let's print it. My department is CIS. Okay. So Any question, guys? You can type any doubts, any questions, or if you want me to go back in some of those cells, I can, I can go back and explain a little bit more or expand the discussion over any of those comments that I have go over already. Okay, well, the second problem says problem 3.3.2.1, we are going to write a code. So write a variable called my name and assign your name to that variable. Using this variable, print the sentence, my name is, and then follow by the name. So in this case here, I'm gonna do my name is Carlos. Oh, this is a string, so we should do the semicolon, the quotes, and let's print information. Print, I'm gonna do here, my name is, I'm just gonna copy what I do have here. I will put it in here. My name is, the quotes, comma, and the name, my underscore name. Okay, there you go. Oh wait, for this one, we are going to use actually the format function. Let me show you how we can use the format function. I will actually keep it this format right here, so in that way you can compare what the format function does versus this way. Let's print my name is. My name is. I'm gonna do a curly bracket and you will see what will happen in the space of those curly brackets. Dot format, and in here I will do the variable, which is my name. So these are two different ways that you can print or you can combine the sentence with a variable. The way that I prefer to print information or to combine variables in a sentence or strings is the second one. This one's right here. This is the one that I do prefer to use when I need to combine a sentence with variable. So what is happening in this syntax is that whatever you have the curly brackets, it will print the information stored in that variable right here. So you see, it's the same thing, but with using the format function. So formatting multiple variables. We are going to create a variable called name and a second variable called age to store a value for each variable. Then we will print the sentence, my name is my name is the name, and I am such a years old. Okay, so we already have defined the name for those variables. So the name, again, I will do Andres, and the age, I will do it 49, and let's print information. So my name is, because I'm gonna use the format function, I will do the curly brackets, and in that curly brackets, I will do the name. My name is, and I am age. Data format. The format. So in the format functions, I will do first whatever I want to appear in here. In that case, I want to do the name. So I want that the name go first. So name, comma, and the age. Name, comma, the age. So in here will be Andres, and in here will be 49. If I do print information, this is what we got. Okay, that is using the format function. So here we are using the format function. Okay, so you can practice by yourself the problem 3.2.4. So you can practice on your end this one right here. So let's move now to this one, how we can print or decide how many decimal points do we want to print. Okay, so let's work on this one. For example, let's say formatting numbers. Using format functions, you can specify the floating points to be printed. When we say floating points is the number of decimal points that you want to print for a float or a double data type. So define a variable pi, which is equal to 3.141569, then print only 2 decimal points. In this case, I want to constrain the number of decimal points that I do want to print. So in that case, I want to do print, and I will say the value of pi is the curly bracket. So remember that I want to keep using the format function. So because I want to do the formal functions, I need to include the curly brackets. So now in that curly brackets, I want to constrain the number of decimal points that I can print from this pi number. So pi is, in this case, I will do the columns to F. So 2 floating points. Sorry, a columns that 2 floating points. So here we will have just 2 floating points, and if we do pi, it will print 3.14 because I'm just restricting the number of decimal points in this format right here. If I do actually 3, it will do now 3.141. Well, it's rounded. This value right here was rounded because the following one was 5. So it just rounded to 2, okay? It rounded to 2. So this is an example about how we can print numerical values and constrain the number of floating points that we want to print from those numerical values using the format function and specifying the number of decimal points into the curly brackets, okay? So remember, if you are modifying the file, save those changes. Well, in every program language, there is a control structure that helps us to modify the workflow of your code, the workflow of your program. So in particular here, we are going to introduce the if-else statement, which are a control structure that can help us to change the workflow of your code. Well, let's work with the problem 4.1 and exemplify how we can use the if-else statement. Well, the problem says you have to complete the code below so that the if, the non-positive, it print positive number, otherwise it should print negative number, okay? It will print positive number, otherwise it will print negative number. So we have num equals to negative 45. So we have two conditions. If the value stored in num is greater than 0, which is positive number, then we will print positive numbers. Otherwise, it will print negative number, okay? So if, this is a statement that we are going to define, if my value num is greater than 0, semicolon, then I will print is a positive number. Is a positive number. Is a positive number, else column, we want to print negative. number. It's a negative number. Okay, there you go. So if we run it, because so far the way that we define num is negative 45, so it will print negative number. So this is a control sequence that will help us to define the workflow of our program. So if num is greater than 0, it will print positive number. Otherwise, which is else, it will print negative number. Something that I'm going to highlight here, and this is more the Python syntax, is that you need to end this expression or any control statement in Python with the columns, with this column. If you don't do the columns, you will get an error. Like, for example, this one right here. So we're missing the columns. A second thing that I'm going to highlight in this part is the indentation. The indentation working in Python is pretty important because it actually defines the scope of a piece of log of code in Python. Like, for example, what I'm saying by that is print functions actually belongs to the body of this expression, the if statement. If I do not do the indentation for print, I will actually have an issue. I will run it and it will say that there is a indentation issues. You see right here, expected at indented block after the if statement. So in Python, this is really important, the indentation. Otherwise, you will have issues and problems running that code. So this is a simple example about how we can use an if statement and control the flow of your code or your program, okay? So with the if-else statement. Now, let's practice with this example right here. You have to complete the code below so that if the age is greater than or equal to 18, the program's output you are eligible to vote. Otherwise, the output you are not eligible to vote. Okay, so this is also a if-else statement application. So let's do if age. It says that is greater than or equal. So here I do have the criteria that I need to define in my expression right here. So if age is greater or equal than 18, the semicolon, then I want to print you are eligible to vote. So this is what I want to print here. I want to print you are eligible to vote. Let's do it here. Else, age, else, I'm just gonna do you are, otherwise you are not eligible to vote. So I'm gonna print this right here. I'm gonna run it. You are eligible to vote. But now if I do 7, for example, it will say you are not eligible to vote, okay? Any questions so far, guys? Any doubts, any questions, something that you want me to clarify before to keep going? No questions? Okay.
Well, may I jump in quickly? Well, when you define these variables, you put some abbreviations like PD and some other stuff. Are these just random words, or are there any rules that we have to follow to define this?
Yes, actually, that's a good question. There are some rules that we need to follow when you want to define a variable or an instance. Yes. For example, some of the rule is that no any variable can the variables cannot be defined first with a number. Like for example, age. This one right here, I cannot start with a number
Oh, okay.
in front, so we cannot do that. And also if you want to define a variable, it cannot be composed or it cannot be two separate words. Like for example, my age. I cannot define a variable like this way. If you want to do that, you need to, have some kind of connection or underscore. That means that this is a whole variable, a whole name variable, but not two different words. That is something important. Also, there are some reserved words in Python. So for example, if you see if, else, those are reserved words in Python. So that means that I cannot use if, or I mean, you can, in Python, you can use it and it will work. But later, if you want to use the if word, that change the context and the application for that part, for that reserved word. So it's not recommended to use any reserved word of, in this case, of Python, because you will have some issue later. So it's preferred not to use, don't use reserved words like if, else, while, switch, none of those. Don't use separate words because that won't work. Just use, put it together using an underscore symbol, character, underscore character, and don't start with numbers to define a value, a variable.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question. That's a good question. Okay, so now, if all three variables are equal, print all numbers are equal, otherwise print not all numbers are equal. So in this case, we are going to build a if-else statement, and we are going to compare x equal. So if you see, and I want to highlight also here, because we are comparing and not doing an assignment, assigning a value to a variable, the comparison operation in Python is equal. So if y is equal, x is equal to y, and equal to c, then I can say all numbers are equal. Else, I can say not all numbers are equal. Okay, and this is an example for one more example for if-else statement. So the problem 4.4 is for you guys to practice. So if the value ball is not equal to 0, print no zero number, otherwise print 0. So I will leave you this one for you so you can practice what we have learned in these previous examples. Well, this is another control statement, elif. The elif is when you want to combine more than one statement, not just two conditions, if, else. So elif is when you have more than one condition. Like for example, in this case, using elif for multiple conditions. For a given score, you must provide a corresponding letter. For example, 100 to 90, so the students or the person will get 8, from 89 to 80, B, 79 to 70, C, and so on. So in this case, the first things that we are going to do is define a variable. Let's do a score, and let's set the score equals to 90, to 80. So the first things that we need to do is if, let's define the condition, if a score is greater or equal than 90, then what I'm gonna do is print A. I'm gonna print the letter A. And here, I instead of using else, like the way that I did here, instead of using else, now I will use elif. Elif score is greater or equal than 80, I'm gonna do print B. Elif, if you see, I do have multiple conditions, not just one or two. The score is greater or equal than 70. Then I'm gonna print C. Elif score is greater or equal than 60. Then I will print D. And finally, is when I'm going to use else, which is the last option that I do have. Put in F. So if you see, I'm using if else, but between those statements or those control statements, I'm using elif for multiple conditions. So in this case, it should print B, right? Because the get equals 80. So this is a multiple condition statement. So now, in this case, I will show you that sometimes there are conditional rules that needs control statements nested. That is called nested if statements, nested if statements. So for example, the problem says you are developing a program to determine if a person is allowed to drive. The program should check two conditions. The first condition is age requirements. A person must be 18 years or older to be eligible for driving. And we have the license requirement. Even if they are old enough, they must have a valid driving license to drive. Based on the response, we are going to print you can drive. This is if the person is 18 or older and has a valid license. You need a license to drive if the person is 18 or older but doesn't have a valid license, and you are too young to drive if the person is under 18. Okay, so let's create an age is equal to, in here, this is actually a prompt, user prompt application. Let's do input. I will ask to the user to provide information. Let's do something like, please provide your age. Your age. So in Python, there is some things that when we are asking for an input, any kind of input that we are asking in Python, using the input function, that will be actually string. So we need to transform that string, or in this case, for this particular application, because it's an age, I'm going to transform that a string into a numerical value. In this case, in particular, I'm transforming the numerical value into an integer value, an int. So let's do license. In the license, will be if the person has a license or not. So it's gonna be input, and I will do do you have a valid license? Yes or no. So if now I'm going to do the coding or the control statement. If the age is greater, because that's one of the requirements, the 18, then I have another a second condition to verify. So this is the first condition. If the age is greater or equal than 18, a second condition is that if this person has a valid license, if license is equal is equal to yes, then I'm gonna print you can drive. You can drive. Else, so if this person is 18, greater or equal than 18, but does not have a valid license, so we can do you need a license to drive. Okay, you need a license to drive. So if you see, this is a nested if statement. So we have a if statement up here, which is the first condition, but then I'm trying to identify or to verify the second condition. So this is a nested control statement, a nested control statement. So if the person does not satisfy the first requirement, which means that is less than 18, I will do else. Let's print you are too young to drive. Okay, I'm gonna run it. And this is what I was saying. So it pop up this little box to type the age. I'm gonna do, let's do 27. And do you have a valid license? Let's do yes. And it says that you can drive. Okay, this is just a pretty a simple example about a nested control statement. So remember, if you are working on your Jupyter Notebook, make sure to save any changes that you have done so far. Now, let's talk about pandas. Pandas is actually a particular data type or a data structure in Python that actually help us to manage the data. So, and we are going to be using data frames for the next sections when we start introducing machine learning and deep learning application. We are going to use data frames to upload our CSV files or our images into this kind of structure. Okay. Well, in order to do or to use data frame in Python, we need to import pandas as PD. PD is actually like a standard name to import this particular library, but you can do any other name, not just PD. But you know, for something that which is a standard PD, if you find out there any code from others author and you see this variable PD, this is actually an object. Through this object, you can use any functions that belongs to that library, to the pandas library. So PD, with the PD, we will be able to use any function that belongs to this pandas library. So let's import a library. I just run the cell, I imported. And the first things that we're gonna do, I will show you how to create a pandas library using a dictionary. So we are going to create a dictionary first. So we will introduce the concept of a dictionary, which is also a particular data structure in Python. And then we are going to create a data frame from that dictionary. So it says that create a dictionary using the following information: glucose, blood pressure, and BMI. So in this case, I will do my underscore dictionary is going to be equals to, for the dictionary, the structure, we need to start with the curly brackets. And now I will set the name for the key. So for the dictionary, these are the keys: glucose, blood pressure, and BMI. And these are the values, this one right here. So I'm just gonna copy and paste because it's actually the same thing that we have right here. And we are creating our dictionary. So this is our dictionaries. This is the keys right here, and these are the values. So let's create the dictionary. There you go. So now we have our dictionary created. Let's create a new cell of code, put it in here. In this code, I'm going to initialize a data frame from that dictionary. So for the data frame, I will call that df. df equals to PD. If you see why I'm using PD, I'm using PD because that's the way that I define the object up here. So I'm doing PD that data frame, that is the constructor, data frame, and as an argument, I will do the dictionary that we just created here. Let's do dictionary and let's run it. So I create already my data frame. If you want to print the data frame information, remember, we already work with the print function. We can do print df. df is another data type. As another data type, we can print information that was stored in that data frame. How that looks like, this is actually a table. The columns are the keys values for my dictionaries, and the rows contains that information, okay? So later, you will see when we start introducing machine learning and all the things, you will see that each row is actually a data point or a record, okay? Well, let's do some data exploration using this particular example. I'm taking just a few more minutes. I just want to at least finish this part right here, and then I can continue because we are going to continue this session on the next Thursday, if I'm not wrong. So we can just complete this part, and then we can continue on next section. So let's print the information. I'm gonna print the f.head. So what I'm doing here, actually we don't need the print. We can actually do df.head. The head, this function, what it will print by default is the first 5 rows of my table, okay, or my data frame in this case. So we are printing the first 5 rows, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So here we have the first 5 rows from our table, and this is the head. If you want to do more than 5, you can actually do the number of rows that you want to print. In this case, I'm printing 7, so it's a 7. You can change it by default. If you don't do any parameter or value, it will print 5, okay? So, and now it's asking to, what about if I do wants to print the last few rows? So I will do tail. Instead of head, I will do tail, and I will print the last 5 rows in my record, my table. So in this case, is the tail of my data set. So now how we can print the columns, the name of the columns. So for the names, I will do print df that column, and that will actually return the name of the columns that we have in our data set, that is glucose, blood pressure, and MBMI. Okay. So there are some statistical informations that we may print using data frames. So for example, df.describe. If we do this one, the describe function, that will actually print some statistical informations like the mean, the standard deviation, and the different quantiles. The first quantile, the second quantile, and the third quantile. 25, 50, and 75, the maximum and the minimum value per each of those features or columns that you have in your table, okay? And at the end, also, you can do a df.info, and that will actually print information about, let me do the parentheses. It will print the information per each column. Like for example, if there is any null information, so missing values, in this case, there is not any missing values, and the data type per each columns that you have or features that you have in your data. int64, this is a float. So these are pretty common functions when we are working with data frames, that's just to have like a insight about our data, okay? Statistically and in terms of missing values. So for the next section, that is next week, I'm gonna continue working on this file. I can share with you what we did so far today. So in case that maybe if you get behind or something, or you were not able to complete some of those cells, so I will be sharing with you all this notebook. So for the next time, we can catch up and start from this point.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you, Carlos. We really appreciate this. Do you have time for questions, Carlos?
Sure.
Okay. Questions, anybody? Be sure to join us next week as Dr. Teran continues, on this um, subject matter. And we're going to have a total of 3 sessions, Carlos, or is it 4 sessions?
4 sections. The first 2 sections is introducing Python, and next week I'm gonna complete the Jupyter notebook, and then we will have more data frame hands-on Python, Matplotlib, how we can plot the data and all the things. So,
Okay. So this is, this is fundamental. I'm really
yes.
glad to see you all joining us, because this is university curricula is changing, and you're at the cutting edge of it. And so stay with it, because you'll be way ahead of many, many other students, where FAMU has a very significant lead in this whole area. We have a wonderful team of data scientists and domain specialists working together. Have you shared the website for the cluster?
Yes, I did. Let me share it again, just in case for maybe
Yeah.
those that were not able to see the link. So this
What's
is
on
the
the
link.
cluster is you have all the recordings of all
Okay.
of our presentations for the Monday series and the Wednesday series that we have. Of course, you have all the research papers that the team has worked on, and uh, lots of very exciting opportunities. Okay. Any questions? If not, I will. Anyone? If not, I will say thank you, Carlos, and we hope that everybody will join us next week. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Thank
Stay
you.
warm. It's going to be very cold tonight. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.